Hey guys, welcome to book review number 75. Today I'm going to be reviewing Bill Bryson's In a Sunburned Country. Badly, because it has been about 9 years since I've read this book. So I'll leave it short. The main thing I kind of remember about this book and just how many interesting facts Bill Bryson has. He's a very absorbing author, kind of seeing the um, kind of follies of Australia, kind of the incongruencies in a very humorous way, in a very sort of compassionate way, which maybe like Howard Jacobson, who I previously have done a review on in The Land of Oz, maybe didn't quite do. But he kind of, let's see, he starts in Cairns, talks about, the crocs, the snakes, everything that's going on up there. Goes to the coast, sees sort of the lushness of it. Brisbane talks about, surfer's paradise and the kind of massive, skyscrapers that have been on there. Don't really remember too much outside of that. What did he say about surfers? I'm just going to look some of this crap up. Reluctant to leave the area, I spent the night in Black Heath. Katoomba? Oh, yeah. He goes to Katoomba. Man, I haven't mentioned Katoomba in I think any of my reviews. That's a pretty cool place. That's just right outside Sydney. That is sort of like this mountainous kind of retreat from the city of Sydney. The thing that I remember he said about Sydney was kind of the poisonous funnel web spiders, and which were the most poisonous spiders in the entire country, and I think maybe the most poisonous in the world, or one of the most poisonous in the world, that existed, ironically, nowhere else in Australia except in its most populated city, and basically sort of around Sydney Harbour. I mean, it was their sort of region that they kind of ecotopical region that they were most dominant in, this little spider. He also mentioned that there's a species of octopus that exists in the Sydney Harbor that exists nowhere else, and he could find very little information about it other than you get stung by it, you get killed. And I actually remember that because in all of the, because I was in Sydney, in all of the Sydney sort of beaches on the harbor side, they all have nets to prevent these octopi from coming in because they're apparently pretty plentiful and also deadly. They don't exist along any of the oceanic beaches because the octopuses don't go out there. The waves are too much. But yeah, I remember particularly in Manly being in these nets trying to swim, It's kind of cool. Well, I mean, not in the net itself, but the net prevented the octopi from getting in. Let's see, I just see the sentence that says, afterwards bloated with pasta and 3 bottles of Italian lager. It is 800 miles from Canberra West to Adelaide. Oh, that's actually a misprint. It says it's along the Sturt Highway, but the Sturt Highway does not run between Canberra and Adelaide. I'm just kind of going through this because I've forgotten most of what this book is. So, oh, I remember it mentioned in the book. These are just sort of funny facts that he points out. I want to say his name started with a P, but imagine that a president of the United States, right? Like, big historical thing. If they went out, say, swimming in Nantucket Sound one day and just died, that would be like a big thing. And that happened to an Australian premier and, head of government, prime minister, outside of Melbourne in a famous sort of spit or of sand that's famous for drowning. Yeah, they just let the prime minister go out there and he died. It just happened. So that was kind of something. And of course it was a big deal in Australia at that time period, but just sort of something kind of happens. I'm talking about the Waltzing Matilda. Waltzing Matilda makes no sense. The Waltzing Matilda is not the national anthem of Australia, though a lot of people think it is. It's actually Advanced Australian Fair, but because Advanced Australian Fair just isn't known, and really, why should it be? Outside of God Save the Queen and God Bless America, I know Canada, most Americans don't even know any national anthems. But it's not Waltzing Matilda; it's Advanced Australian Fair. But it would be great if it was, because that song is just very strange. Let's see. Great Dividing Range, that's obviously in the eastern part of the country, the biggest mountain range. I think he takes the Nullarbor Express, or whatever it's called, between Adelaide and Perth at one point, that being the great train ride across the desert that kind of exists between the kind of east and southeast populated regions of Australia and the other populated region of Australia, which is the west, particularly Perth. But there's this huge stretch where it's completely desolate, where the train just runs for hundreds of miles without making a singular turn. Oh yeah, he went up to Darwin, saw some of the devastation of Cyclone Tracy. Yeah, 6 minutes, good enough. I don't remember. I mean, I remember that I really liked this book, and I remember I read it when I went to Australia about 9 years ago. And a lot of it kind of like translates over into other books, because it's kind of generalistic knowledge about, there are crocodiles, and there are kangaroos, and people die, and there are jellyfish that kill you within 3 minutes of when they sting you, and Ayers Rock is a thing, and the Nullarbor Plain, that's a thing. And there are vineyards everywhere, the Margaret River, the Yarra Valley, the McLaren Valley, the Basra Valley, the Hunter Valley. There's wine everywhere. Actually, one of the things that I remember about Australia, and I think he mentions this in this book, is that, Australia is both known for beer and wine, both. But because beer is produced on site, it's kind of hard to produce in excess, just because, I guess you can have an excess amount of wheat, but for the most part, it's kind of in a contained environment. Whereas, like, the amount of wine the way wine is produced has produced a glut of wine, because people like Australian wine, but Australia produces mass quantities of wine that is sold very cheap. I don't know exactly how the pyramid structure works, but in order to justify kind of the top end exploit or export process. So, like, if you have a vineyard and you're looking only for the best grapes, then you have all these other grapes, maybe, that, like, don't cut standard, and they make, like, this crap wine. I remember when I was in Australia that, like a 6-pack of beer would be the equivalent of, like, $14 or $15, which is just it's all, like, regular beer. But you could get, like, one of those bags of wine, or like a box of wine, for like $3. It was like, or the equivalent of like $3. It was just completely crazy. So if you want to be a wino, I guess this is a good country to be a wino at, just because of excessive production. Let's see, what else? He talks, well, that's kind of interesting. He talks about John McDougall Stewart, who the Stewart Highway is named after, and who famously was the first to bisect Australia south to north. This being, I've talked about this in other reviews, but this being important in the time, because telegraph was the budding means of communication that could communicate around the world, that previously took weeks and weeks and weeks to communicate, but because Australia was so isolated, it couldn't do it. So what they had to do is they had to find an overland route from the south, where the population was, to the north, which is the closest to Indonesia, where lines could be laid to, like Southeast Asia, which could be lined to, further into Asia, which could go to Europe. And so Stewart, actually kind of this crazed Scotsman, was the first to completely go overland in Australia. They knew that they could do it, but the land was just so desolate and hostile that, it didn't happen until he did it. Let's see, Ayers Rock. Yeah, I talked about that. Alice Springs, I'm sure he talks about some Aborigines. Okay, this review is running long. I talk a little about a lot of different things, but mostly a lot of facts, but presented in a very humorous way. Check it out. Bill Bryson's in a Sunburned Country. Bye, you guys.